Please rise in body and or spirit for our gathering hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Wolin, the settled minister here at the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota. We're so happy to have everyone here, both in person as well as online on YouTube. Welcome. If you are a visitor here, we want to make sure to let you know you are invited to participate in any of our events. And we encourage you to find out more about Unitarian Universalism. We invite you to consider registering either on our virtual guest book at uusrq.org or right outside the front door here where at the welcome table there is, if you're in person, you can just jot down your name. And if you do, we will send you at least a weekly email telling you about all the events that are going on at the UU, and there are many. As well, we invite you to coffee and conversation after the service. We look forward to getting to know each other. We have a few announcements today. The first, today is being the first Sunday of the month. It's New Member Sunday, so if you want to join the UUs of Sarasota after the service, go into my office, which is in the building right behind it. Have some time to grab some coffee. But about 10 minutes after the service, if you want to sign the book and become a member, we invite you to do so. Our next announcement is from our BidFest, Scott Rubin.
Good morning. I'm Scott Rubin. I'm the technology lead on the BidFest team. For those of you who may be new to UUs of Sarasota, BidFest is our annual auction and lunch where we sell services, classes, lunches, dinners, theater tickets, gift cards, and other social events. That's a mouthful. Let's just call them experiences. BidFest will be on Saturday, November 16th, right here on the UU campus. Last year we had lunch for about 200 people and sold more than 130 experiences, raising more than $35,000 because you all are amazing. We also had a great time. On the BidFest team, we like to say we put the fun in fundraising, not just for all of you, but for our work as a team, too. Last week, Ava kicked off BidFest season with a fantastic presentation. I'd expect nothing less from our publicity lead, but you may have noticed she didn't show any pictures of herself. I'm going to correct that. You may know that for some reason the symbol of the city of Sarasota is Michelangelo's David. So I thought, in honor of her terrific kickoff last week, we need a statue I'll call Deva. We have a great time, and thank goodness Ava has a great sense of humor, and our BidFest team wants you to join in the fun. The fun starts on the BidFest website, bidfest.org, which is now open. You can go on the site and volunteer to help make BidFest fun for everyone. You also can tell us what you're donating to BidFest or what you would like someone else to donate, which we call our wish list. If you need ideas, the catalogs for the past few auctions are available on the website. Remember, that's bidfest.org. It's open right now, but I think Jay's giving me a look, so don't go there until after the service. If you're here on campus, the BidFest table will be open in the courtyard after the service. Come visit us. Pretty much everything you can do at bidfest.org, we can also help you with at the table. We want to make it as easy as possible for everyone to join in the fun of BidFest. Thank you for supporting BidFest and helping us put the fun in fundraising.
And it is fun, I just want to say. I mean, last year I got the no-hold poker thing, and I won. I don't know if you like that about your minister or not, but anyway, it is now my honor as well. We have one more announcement. A good friend of the congregation, Dan Boxer, wants to make an announcement about an event that will be happening here at the UU. Come on, Dan.
Morning. My name is Dan Boxer, and I'm one of the founders of the Boxer Diversity Initiative. And I'm here to talk to you about some programs, but I'm also here to talk to you about the UU of Sarasota. We have been going for 15 years promoting anything to do with diversity and inclusion. We've had many programs, many speakers, and the last few years, we worked a lot with New College. We had programs there, and many of you attended. And then something happened at New College, which I think you all know about. And when that happened, who should step into the breach but you? You were the ones that agreed to have a marker commemorating the lynching victims here. In fact, we have one coming up on November, and we really need your help, continue to need your help, and we need your support. Over the course of the next year, we're actually having a discussion series, 6 programs, 3 of which are here. And they include 2 Pulitzer Prize winners, the actual soil collection of the Minnesota Remembers Project, a discussion on benches boycott. We have social justice as it emanated from the civil rights movement of the 60s. We have a program with Gilbert King, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner, which our own Judge Williams will moderate. And we culminate in a program called Jonathan I, who is just finished writing a biography of Martin Luther King and won the Pulitzer Prize for it. So I really hope you will attend. Everything is free, and we invite the entire community. And we are also having a program called Bending the Arc to encourage high school students to attend these, the culmination of which will be a trip for all those students to all the civil rights sites in Alabama. Our first program, which is on October 19th here, is with Dr. Ray Arsenault, who just finished a book on John Lewis. It's on October 19th, and who could better talk about voting rights and talk about John Lewis at this time in life than Dr. Arsenault. He wrote the definitive book on the Freedom Riders. He was here once before, and I know you'll enjoy it. So everything is outside. You can register on our website. It's free, and thank you. And I apologize for leaving, but I live on Longboat Key, and we got some serious hurricane preparations. So forgive me. Thank you.
It is now my great honor to invite up C.Y. Hahn to share her beautiful gift of music with us. Thank you. Our opening reading today is from James Baldwin, Notes from a Native Son. Society is held together by our need. We bind it together with legend, myth, coercion, fearing that without it we will be hurled out into the void, within which, like the earth before the word was spoken, the foundations of society are hidden. From this void, ourselves, it is a function of society to protect us. But it is only this void, our unknown selves, demanding forever a new act of creation which can save us from the evil that is in the world. As we light our chalice, let it guide us to see our past clearly, as well as to point a way forward to a new act of creation. As we light the chalice, please join me now in affirming our value of pluralism. We empower to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Thank you, Lucas, for lighting the chalice for us today. Welcome, everyone. Today's story is This Land, written by Ashley Fairbanks and illustrated by Bridget George. In today's story, there is a song with a familiar tune. Feel free to join in. This is my house, and I live here with my family. But before us, another family lived here. And before that, another family lived there too. And another, and another. And before our house was here, there was another family with a different kind of house, a wigwam. There was a whole village full of families, laughing, cooking, playing. They were even annoying little brothers. And when people came here from Europe, they forced most of those families to leave their homes. All across the country, Native Americans had to leave everything they knew and move onto small places of land called reservations. But despite everything done to them, many Native American people still live in my city today. Like my friend TJ. He's Anishinaabe, and he lives with his grandma. TJ's grandma, Noko, taught me that before my ancestors arrived, this land was filled with indigenous people from coast to coast. I wonder if all of them made food as good as she does. Noko's full name is Nokomis, which means my grandmother in the Anishinaabe language. Noko taught us a song to help us remember that indigenous people have always been here, and they're still here wherever we go. This land is sacred, this land is living, from the Black Hills to Pueblo Canyon, from the swampy bayou to the salmon swimming. This land all has a history. Now, whenever my family goes somewhere, I ask, who lived here before the people who live here now? At the Grand Canyon, I learned that there are 8 tribes that call it home. The Havasupai, the Yavapai, the Paiute, Hopi, Zuni, Hualapai, Apache, and Dene, which we also know as the Navajo. Their relatives have lived here longer than anyone can remember, even the really old people. At the Golden Gate Bridge, I learned that the Ohlone have been fishing here for thousands of years. And in New York City, I learned that the Lenape were here before all of these skyscrapers. But everywhere we go, there are indigenous people to learn from. So I keep singing. This land is sacred, this land is living. This land all has a history, even my backyard. All of the United States sits on indigenous land, your home, your school, and all your favorite places. Like Disney World, it's on Seminole land, which used to belong to the Temecula and the Tocobaga before the Seminoles were driven into Florida. The White House is on Nacotchtank and Piscataway lands. Mount Rushmore is on Osage-Sacoan land. You can go to native-land.ca website and type in your address to see whose land you are on. Why is that important? Well, when we acknowledge territory, we are showing respect for the indigenous people, both past and present. And it's important to know and understand our history. Although it can be hard and sad to learn about how indigenous peoples were treated in places where we live, it's important for us to do so. Because when we learn about the history of the land we live on, we begin to heal the wounds of our past. But just acknowledging the past is not enough. We have to treat indigenous people and the land that they are connected to with dignity and respect. This is good for all of us, whether we are indigenous or black, white, Asian, or Latino. With respect, we can build a better world together. We can have clean air, clean water, and soil that would allow us and the plants and animals all around us to thrive. So now let's sing together again. This land is sacred, this land is living, from the Black Hills to Pueblo Canyon, from the swampy bayous to the salmon swimming. This land all has a history. So now I invite all our children and youth to join their teachers in their classrooms to learn about the Jewish holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And if you're new here, no worries, I'll show you the way. To all of you, I hope you'll enjoy some sweet apple slices with our children during the coffee hour. Thank you.
Beautiful, just beautiful. Thank you. Our centering in words today are from the Reverend Stephen Schick. We reach for the mask of righteousness when our insecurities are exposed. Slip it over purple scars and yellowing bruises that we gained when hope faced we first met our fears. Once inside our mask, comfort fills our lungs and our breathing softens. No one told us the dangers of living behind the mask, of what happens when tears fall in the darkness and do not wash away arrogance and pride. No one told us how life fades from faces untouched by opposition. But now that we know, will you help me lift my mask? And if you'll let me, I'll help to lift yours. As we enter a time of silence, I ask you to contemplate what masks you wear. So, for much of my adult life, I have been an overachiever. And because of that, it might surprise some of you that for much of my childhood, I was considered an underachiever in school. I found that as long as I showed up and didn't make too much trouble with my natural abilities, I could easily skate by and get mostly A's and a few B's, which usually was in physical education. And I have to admit, when I went to college, I realized for the first time how much I skated by, and that is what led me to become an overachiever. In my second semester in college, I was lucky enough to have a teacher who instilled within me the love of learning for learning's sake. She was by far the most demanding teacher I ever had, and learning isn't always easy. It makes us go places we would rather not go sometimes. It makes us eliminate presumptions that support our view of the world. It makes us stretch our mind to see the world in different ways. And this teacher challenged me and taught me to see the subtext and context of everything I was studying. She taught me to read in between the lines. She opened my eyes to education as being more than just some utilitarian bargain to gain knowledge to obtain a better position in the work world. It taught me that education is a way of life, a way of living in the world, to better understand not only the world around us, but ourselves as well. And I do think much of what I was taught in school was quite sanitized. As author William F. Buckley so succinctly put it, history is the polemics of the victor. And after hearing the same stories over and over again, we sort of become conditioned to believe certain things as truths. And it is important to separate myth from fact. Okay, accept myth for what it is, a story to teach us something, but to realize that it is a myth and not a fact. And we can learn from both. And I was actually thinking about this as a week from Monday is the federal holiday Columbus Day. Now, throughout my youth, I was taught the classic poem in school that starts in 1492. Does anybody know the next line? Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He had 3 ships and left from Spain. He sailed through sunshine, wind, and rain. He sailed by night, he sailed by day. He used the stars to find his way. It was deceptively simple. And we repeated it all the time. We were taught that Columbus discovered America. We should be clear, Columbus may not have even been the first European to come to the Americas. And there is strong archaeological proof that there were people from Greenland and Iceland who arrived here approximately in the 11th century. In fact, Columbus never actually landed in what today we call the United States. But the need for this myth is because it is hard to say America was discovered when obviously there were people already living here. You know, we're often told the indigenous Americans came across the Bering Strait through Alaska. Indigenous American scholars differ with this opinion and feel that it has been used and embedded into our culture as just another way to deny indigenous claims on the land, positioning our view of them as merely being the first immigrants to land here. But either way, they were here long before the Europeans discovered this country. We continue learning the myth of the Native Americans being gentle hunter-gatherers who lived nomadic lives. And although certainly this was true of some tribes, moving their camp based on weather and food supply, much like our snowbirds today, Many tribes, though, developed farming communities and had very advanced agricultural techniques. They had developed trade paths and created those throughout the land here, much of which was eventually used against them by the European invaders. We're not taught about, so the nomadic myth persists, right? So to keep in our unconscious that they did not have a right to the land because they didn't stay in one place all the time. We are not taught about tribal democracy structures that were in place long before Europeans arrived, or even long before Enlightenment thinkers created them. We're not taught about the Cherokee Nation, who actually fully assimilated into American culture what America always claimed against indigenous people. And they did. They dressed like Europeans. They studied all the works of the Europeans. They created their manners and everything to fully assimilate, and still they were forced off their land. They filed a suit that went to the Supreme Court, which lost. So we were not taught also about Chaco Canyon in the southwest United States, where buildings built in the 11th century were aligned to capture solar and lunar cycles, requiring multiple generations of astronomical observations and centuries of skillfully coordinated construction. We don't hear about this often, even today, because that fact that they were performing advanced astronomical experiments would clash with our myth that they were savages and thereby our justification for conquering their land. The 2012 General Assembly, the annual gathering of Unitarian Universalist congregations, we as an association passed a resolution to repudiate the doctrine of discovery. Yet one more thing I did not learn about in school. The doctrine of discovery was based on a papal bull, which is an order from the Pope, written in 1455, which granted authority to Europeans to, and I quote, among other things, free and ample faculty to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Muslim and pagan, meaning non-Christian, lands, all kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods, whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, end quote. This is your papal bull. Even more shockingly to me, I learned as I studied this, was that the United States Supreme Court in 1823 used this doctrine of discovery as a foundational argument to disallow the sale of indigenous-owned land by indigenous Americans directly to European settlers, saying that it could only be sold to the United States government, indicating that it had inherited that right from the Europeans upon declaring our independence from England. So just think about it. They were, first of all, they were forced off the reservation. From one reservation, their land was chopped up into parcels, and then they were not allowed to sell that land to the highest bidder. They were forced to sell it to the government at small amounts. Now, it's just interesting that this country, which was founded on the concept of segregation of church and state, used a religious doctrine as a means to deny indigenous Americans their land rights in this country. There are some who have called for us to rename Christopher Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day. And on Columbus Day, if you go look at the UUA website, they will have a banner saying Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And some local communities throughout the country have done this as well. You know, I grew up in a very heavily Italian neighborhood where ironically, I actually went to Christopher Columbus High School, actually. And I have found that most Italians I know view this more of an Italian Heritage Day. Actually, October is Italian Heritage Month, as opposed to a day venerating the man Christopher Columbus. And non-Italians were mostly just happy to get the day off of school and work, honestly. But I'm completely in support of changing the name to Indigenous Peoples Day. But let us remember Columbus Day. Let it be a stark reminder to us of how we came to be in this country. Let it shine in our face, both our powers of creation and destruction. Let it be a reminder to us that the truth is not always so obvious. And one thing that is not a myth, but is the truth, is that we need your ongoing financial support to continue the good works of the UU of Sarasota. So it's with this truth in mind that we now take our offering. Please be as generous as you can. For those online or here on your cell phone, there's a link to donate in the YouTube description or the QR code in the order of service. Let this sacred time begin. Our next reading is from W.E. Du Bois, The Propaganda of History. One is astonished in the study of history at the recurrence of the idea that evil must be forgotten, distorted, skimmed over. We must not remember that Daniel Webster got drunk, but only remember that he was a splendid constitutional lawyer. We must forget that George Washington was a slave owner and simply remember the things we regard as creditable and inspiring. The difficulty, of course, with this philosophy is that history loses its value as an incentive and example. It paints perfect people and noble nations, but it does not tell the truth. And now, once more, C.Y. Hahn. As in our opening reading, James Baldwin wrote, "Society is held together by our need. We bind it together with legend, myth, coercion." We often need to create myths to justify our actions and existence in this life. And although we can see courage and faith in the journey to America, we should not look past what was wrought by the arrival of the Europeans. I had the opportunity to listen to a presentation by Professor Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, author of the book Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. I highly recommend the book. The audio book I found actually very easy. It's a long book, so that helps. When I'm walking the dog, I just, listen. But anyway, when the first pilgrims landed here, they came upon a village that was decimated by disease, but the book points out that the Europeans who came here conquered the indigenous people through brutal violence, using tactics of total war, burning villages and crops, killing women, children, and livestock. Literally, immigrants from Europe would just squat on indigenous lands and, through the use of superior military technology, committed genocide against indigenous people so they could acquire the land. Now, this picture that's on the front of the order of service, called Spirit of the Frontier, showing Colombia, which represents America, in a Roman toga, supposedly bringing enlightenment. You see, it's lighter on one side to the west, actually. And so I have to admit, there's no way a sermon could go into the depth, honestly, of all the atrocities that the Europeans did that were documented in this book. But the thing I want to point out is the author points out that this was something and part of the European culture that started with the Crusades, allowing mercenaries under the guise of religion to destroy Muslim towns and keep anything that they confiscated. We saw it in the Spanish Inquisition and the expulsion of the Moors and the Jews from Spain and Portugal. We saw it in England's 17th century Protestant invasion of Ireland, where they confiscated from Irish Catholics, farmers, 500,000 acres of land and declared them open to settlement for Protestant Scots who fought for England. At the formation of our country, the goal was acquiring land for European settlers. Acquisition of land through violence has become a part of the psyche of this country. In addition to our some 70 Indian wars that lasted into the early 20th century. I was really surprised when I was looking that up, that it went into the 20th century. The United States has used this tactic ongoing in our international wars as well, starting in the early 19th century with the Barbary Wars. In our conquest of the Philippines, we actually called their indigenous people Indians, right? We always conquer with the mantle of freedom, of helping supposedly less civilized people. And before reading this book, I never knew that between 1968 and 73, in my lifetime, the United States and Britain forcibly removed the indigenous inhabitants of the Chagos Archipelago, which is comprised of more than 60 islands in the Indian Ocean, for the purpose of creating a major U.S. military base. And this is the pattern. We need land, we wipe out the population. We keep the myth of the indigenous people as enemies still alive in our culture. In the Vietnam War, the phrase Indian country was used often in talking about the Vietnamese who were enemies, right? And then they just shortened that to in-country after they got negative feedback about that, and always to denote enemy territory. In the first Gulf War, Brigadier General briefing reporter stated that, and I quote, that the U.S. military wanted to ensure a speedy victory once it committed land forces to Indian country. And the following day, the National Congress of American Indians pointed out that 15,000 indigenous Americans were serving as combat troops in the Persian Gulf. So our latest wars with Afghanistan and Iraq, we legitimized the use of torture by pointing to a Supreme Court decision in 1873 regarding how indigenous prisoners were treated. It's just really shocking. Our culture is a culture of total war that was started long before we became a nation and continues today still, using indigenous people as the avatar of the enemy. Having facts or understanding truth doesn't always mean something will be accepted as truth. I think we have seen this in our culture today especially. You know, I remember watching one of those Madagascar movies. I think there are 3 or 4 of them now. I don't know which one it was, but my grandkids loved them. And in one scene, the lion Alex wants to inform the pilot of damage to the plane and states, "You have to listen to me." And the pilot, who is a penguin, replied in a bit of a snooty voice, "That is where you are wrong. I have to hear you because you won't shut up. But I don't have to listen." And then the plane crashed. It is not enough to just be right. Right? It is important to be in relationship with others so that they will listen to you.
Why we understand the world the way we
I do not know. Wow, that was weird.
from others by listening.
Wow.
If we can create an environment for listening.
I don't know what I pressed, but it's talking to me. How weird is that? How weird is that? I don't know. I don't know how that happens. Life is a mystery. I'm just going to say that. And now I have to just turn the microphone off, which is fine. I hope that's it. There we go.
What was their experience?
Okay. Wow. Technology. I love it. Okay. So, I feel like the robot takeover is happening now all of a sudden. AI, no. That's another sermon topic I guess I'll do in the future. But I want to say, so it's important to be in a relationship so people will listen to you. Every time I lead an adult religious education class, I use a covenant that includes the phrase, cultivate attentive listening. Listening to understand and suspending judgment. We have been conditioned to believe that we unconditionally have the ultimate truth. That we do not leave room for others' perspective of reality. We all have different experiences, context as to how and why we understand the world the way we do. We can learn from others, though, by listening. And if we can create an environment for listening, then perhaps others will listen to us. And, oh my God, it's doing it again. Okay. Anyway, perhaps others will listen to us, and then we can come to a better understanding about what their experiences were that led them to that. Even if we don't agree on things, we can learn about them. What drives them? What are their fears? What are their hopes? What were their experiences that led them to their way of thinking? I do believe there are underlying truths to the universe, but we merely get a glimpse of it. Oh my God, this is driving me crazy. I'm just, I could just go to the printed copy, which I always do keep a backup because I do believe it's always important to have a backup. So it's really pretty amazing. I don't know what I did. I pressed some button. Anyway, so I believe that there are underlying truths to the universe, but we merely get a glimpse of it. We maybe see it in a burning bush, or we We see it in a prophet's words, or maybe in the structure of DNA and in the pictures of the Hubble telescope. We merely see glimpses, merely pieces of the whole, right? We need to still search for those missing pieces of truth and how they all connect. And we must continue to search to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and to the innermost parts of our soul. Because this is who we are. Unitarian Universalists, religious pilgrims, understanding that our search is not for new land, no, but for the free and responsible search for meaning and truth, understanding that we are interdependent with all that is, understanding that every person has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion, understanding that revelation is ongoing, and understanding that we must both nurture the spirit and help heal our world in order to build that new creation, a beloved community. May it be so. Please rise in body and or spirit for our closing hymn, number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere. King, do with it what you will, just don't say in the years to come that you would have lived your life differently if only you had heard this story. You've heard it now. What will you do now that you know? Please join me now in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish its flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for your presence here today. Go forth, be safe, make sure you take precautions, and do good. Thank you.